Very good.
Hi everyone, welcome. This is episode 11 of An Inside Look. The title of today's little discussion will be Bold New Voices. Okay, so we are jumping in to a slightly different general topic than maybe you're used to. Typically, we've kind of focused on a piece or maybe a set of pieces by a composer. Today, we are kind of going into the realm of a lot of the work we do with composers, particularly young composers. And I just want to kind of start off with some of the educational initiatives that Beo has been a part of through its time, just to kind of set the stage for the different types of people that we've worked with in a more educational context. So some of the things that we do, we have a kind of long-standing relationship with Dakota chamber music. So we often, not often, every summer usually, we'll go up to North Dakota and we are working with students on chamber music skills. And when I say student, I mean people of all ages who are there because they want to grow, because they want more experience doing something. It's not, hi, I'm sitting at a desk and I'm young. No, we're really working on just in that context, chamber music skills, but in other contexts, it's some other stuff. So we've worked with middle school, high school, elementary school students on just general listening skills, on music skills that we're working on literally on a daily basis as well. So yeah, I think it's important to just think about when we are thinking about education and about learning, it's not really like, oh, we are the pros and we're educating the peons. No, it's really we're all constantly working on these skills and we're just kind of sharing what we do on a regular basis with other audiences, other types of groups.
We're all students forever.
Yes, truly. I remind myself this every day.
Yeah.
So then, just to jump into some of the composer stuff we do, we have a long-standing relationship with Charlotte New Music, and we're just going to let Elizabeth do the talking for, who she is. She is the director of Charlotte New Music, and let her introduce herself.
My name is Elizabeth Kowalski, and I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I am a musician, but I'm also the founder and artistic director of Charlotte New Music in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I teach, I play, I write, and I lead a whole bunch of crazy ideas. That's what I do.
It's kind of fun to hear her talk about this stuff just because, Beo's been doing Charlotte for, is it 6 years or something like that, but this was just their 10th year, and I've been doing it since their 2nd year, and it's really neat to see where it's come. And not only that, but even just thinking about all the work that she's done for this festival, and it's really become something totally different from what I remember that first year that I was there. And it's really neat. Of course, when that has developed a friendship as well, but.
I might have been one of the first concerts, chamber music concerts, this was before Beo existed, that I had heard Sean and Jason play for. I think the whole set was pieces from this festival. And I'd always been very on the fence or very kind of know about contemporary music. Mm-hmm. And that was the first concert where I went to where I was like, oh, wait, hold on. The ideas are organized. Oh, I can follow everything. Oh, actually, that's really beautiful. Or where have I heard that before, this or something? And that was like, I had heard a lot of contemporary music before, but that stuff, it's like the toner was still drawing on the printer page. Right? I mean, you know what I mean. It heat fuses onto it or whatever. But yeah, that was to whoever had composed the pieces, for that year of Charlotte. You want a convert.
What's funny is I remember, I could even tell you, those people. I remember those pieces, and you stepped in, I think, last minute for that concert.
So in summation, you were not too on the fence with new music, and then you heard it, and you're like, oh, this is like music.
I could always, well, I'll say it this way. I could always get it, but that was like maybe the first concert where I just sort of enjoyed it and didn't necessarily need to work to get it.
That's
you
fair,
know, it
yeah,
was,
yeah.
yeah.
Why don't we play something?
Sure.
So we're going to jump into, we're just going to play excerpts mostly. We'll get into some of the pieces that we'll play, actually the whole thing of some of the works that we received before the festival started. So we were working on these, preparing them, and part of the festival is we actually really do work with the composers before the performance itself. And that's such a fun and really important experience, I think, for like on both ends, for us as the performers and also for the composers, just to really, I mean, first of all, get a feel for us as people and as players, because, you know, some of them know us beforehand, but a lot of the times it's really your kind of, you might change the way you approach writing for a certain string quartet, for example. And so this piece that we're going to start with is called Ignition, and it's by Aaron Wong. So I'm first curious, to whoever, I think from the first time we got the score to maybe our first rehearsal with Aaron, and then also now we've been away from the music for a couple of months since before preparing for today. How has that kind of like shifted your perception of the piece, or even of if you were maybe to talk to Mr. Wong now, you know, things that have changed, things that you've ruminated on since working on it?
I remember when we first started this piece, well, of course, as we talk about with a lot of composers, our first introduction to them is when we get the score and we page through it.
Yeah.
And really, in the first 30 seconds, I've made up my mind, and I think a lot of people have. Now, whether you hold to that opinion is obviously different, but what I thought when I saw Aaron's piece right away was, wow, this is really well organized.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot on the page here, and it's all the stuff that tells me the stuff I need to need. I'm really curious to hear this. And then the more we worked on it, the more I really thought this was a strong piece and a fun piece. And now coming back to it, has it been 6 months?
Yeah.
When we first read it, you know, in prepping for this episode, it felt like putting on a nice glove that I was happy to have on. It's like, oh, there's that chapstick from last season. You know? Like, and it was such a warm piece, and it's so nice to come back to it. I think, if anything, my fondness has grown for it. Coming back to it.
I think even walking in for the rehearsal, I heard someone warming up on it, and I thought, oh, this is like a flashback to the summer. I really, And then I think that for me, I don't know what, I couldn't necessarily articulate why, but for me, oftentimes when I start when I mean these pieces, what I mean is something I'm not familiar with at all. Is I warm up to them over time. The more I get to know them, I really grow to love them. This was not necessarily like that. This one, for me, the first time we started it, right away I was like, oh, I really like this. And I can't necessarily say why, but I just had that reaction.
I think a thing for me that's changed, I guess, is, well, naturally a lot of the composers are not string players. Or they are, like, their tastes and their interests are, maybe haven't been in Mozart, Brahms, Beethoven, and all that sort of stuff. So, like, particularly in this piece, there's a lot of things on the page where I go, oh, cello wouldn't normally do that. Huh, okay, what, huh? And then something. But, you know, after it's all ironed out, we've worn the clothes for a while, now it just feels to me like sound. And it's like, okay, now I know that this, and this is like, this, I know it says here airy on the page, but even like some of the images that are in my head is like clouds or like little rays of light, things like that, things bursting, fading away, and like my brain is there now. And of course, when we were first working on it, my brain is more likely to be in logistics and how does this work? Is the balance good? And how about the rhythm here and this and whatever? Now that we've had it, it feels like gestures, and maybe that's what Aaron had in his head. You know? And then the challenge is, gosh, I have these gestures in my head. How do I put that on the page so that they're gonna get close?
Sure. Yeah, I think one thing, especially going back to it, is we talk a lot about what we want to see or what we kind of is helpful to see on a page when we're getting something for the first time with very little context. And one thing that I think this piece does really fantastically is it has just the right amount of helpful, you know, like guiding hints and clarity and detail. You know, you mentioned the airy, but yeah, I mean, what we get is the title of it and then a direction of not too heavy and airy, and then very specific dynamics, articulations, timings, that it's so helpful when we're seeing something like this that kind of like directs us instantly into how we're thinking about things and the level of detail. It's kind of like matched on both ends. And that's something I really appreciate about this piece.
Especially not knowing Aaron before,
Right,
right?
exactly,
Because,
yeah.
you know, I'll use Sean as an example. I've been playing your music for how many years? I feel like I get a piece in front of me. You would have to write very little, and I sort of know what sort of tendencies I'm going to want to do or what you might want. Also, the personality really comes into play. Now, I get a piece by Aaron Wong, and I just don't know who this is. So the best clues I'm getting are here, until we meet him, of course.
Right.
But I agree. It's really a good combination of things here. Also, it's not too cluttered, right? It's not too much.
Yeah. Let's change course a little bit. So one thing that we do as part of the festival itself is this speed writing challenge, which I think it probably sounds crazy to anyone. There are definitely things like this in any kind of field, but basically what the composers are asked to do is write a very short piece up to 1.5 minutes in a couple of days, and then we get that music and we are given a couple of days to learn it and prepare it and perform it.
So that it's fair.
Yeah. It's right, both ends. And so what we are going to showcase are a couple of those challenges. And I think one thing that's really interesting to think about is we're always thinking about like function, the function of a piece, the function of something that's performed for either an event or for a particular ensemble, or it's a commission for the purposes of a gala or something like that. There's always that. And this sort of exercise, it's not necessarily for a specific event or a specific whatever, except that it's for us. They know us at this point because in the festival we've kind of talked to people, some of them we've worked with, and also they know that it's for us in 3 days. And we'll play this first one, but I want to kind of think about how that changes the game on both sides and what that kind of encourages us to think about. So this is called, I didn't explain this particular challenge. We'll wait until we play it.
Yeah.
Okay, but this is by Brittany Benton, and it's called Bach Unraveled.
you maybe heard things that are familiar.
You want to explain what
every
the
year
particular challenge was?
Well, it started with the festival would say, here are your parameters, right? You get to write it based on this, or here's a concept, here's an idea, here's a track. I think one year was a David Bowie track. Yeah. And this year you and I got together and said, hey, we should give them two contrasting things as their starting point for these. And they were?
And also, so if you have an idea at home, we did feature one of these pieces in an earlier episode, but the Bach comes from
Art of the Fugue.
Art of the Fugue. Ryan, can you play your first 4 pitches? And what we're missing, of course, right, exactly. So we asked for Bach, and part of the reason we selected that is because we thought it would be cool if before the performance we could actually, it was something we had just prepared. Mm-hmm. So we could perform, that very piece right before the audience hears it. And what was the other example? It was Led Zeppelin.
Led Zeppelin.
And
Cashmere,
right? Yeah.
Which we can't sing for you because we don't want to have to pay for the rights.
That's right. So actually, it's kind of interesting you were saying that not only are they dealing with a very short timeline, but it's also the content. They're given, hey, use this content. Yes. It means you can't show up prepared with something, already prepared.
Cheating.
No cheating.
No cheating.
Yes, they didn't know. Yeah, and I think one of the cool things about this is just what a composer thinks is super helpful information given that time period. So for me, it's so helpful to see hauntingly at the top of the page. It instantly gives me a feeling of the character, and I think there's so many just cool qualities of this. Little miniature in terms of like the harmonies, just like the blend. It really is written for a string quartet, but it's just got this like cool twist to it. Yeah, really fun.
And it's cool because that it shows the core spirit of creativity. You have 3 days.
Yeah.
Go. And I like the title of this episode, Bold New Voices, because by the way, we're going to give you one of the best-known composers ever to have lived, Bach. And one of the top bands ever, Led Zeppelin. Now go write your own piece on it, and you have 3 days. Well, look, a lot of the pieces that we're featuring today are bold in that there's really something being said, and it's really been transformed. This is a great example. How Brittany starts with the motive is like, okay, yes, due diligence, here you go. But right away, your entrance, you come in and it's already altered a little bit. We go somewhere else. So it's really fun. At least I'll speak for myself. Yeah. So it's really fun to see what someone can do given those parameters.
Yes.
I think real creativity exists in parameters sometimes.
Yeah, and I think when I spoke to Elizabeth beforehand, there was something she pointed out that I kind of know it in the back of my mind, but when you get a bunch of composers together from wherever, they all have such extremely different backgrounds, not just like, where they went to school, but like literally where they come from, literally what their musical training is, what instrument they play. All of this just comes to play when they're actually writing for us, and especially when they're writing something based on something that's this classic masterwork, and then this rock song, and just put it together, and where people's affinities lie, and it just brings out such different qualities from each of the composers. Maybe let's have Elizabeth's clip here before we jump into the next speed writing, which is just so different.
You're basically, every piece you write, if you don't play the instruments, you're asking someone to be a partner on the piece for you, to be your voice, And it's not even like you're asking them to make it their voice, So there are specific reasons that specific actors and actresses are picked for certain roles. It's because that's already, like, their personality is a good fit for that piece, And it's the same thing I feel like for writing something too, You really have to, that's part of writing, and that's part of the skill you develop, I think. And that's what makes you more relevant. I mean, composers and performers, like, if the performer likes a piece, they're going to play it more, and so will other performers.
It's an interesting point, writing for other instruments. You mentioned something about, this was something about written for the cello, because I always wonder if that's been romanticized a little. If I think something like Beethoven, he doesn't give a crap what instrument he's writing for. It's all still motivic, and that's what makes it so difficult. Oh wow, I have to play this motive here now, it fits in the hand. Oh crap, now we're in A flat major, it doesn't fit in the hand. He doesn't care. Just like, okay, you could turn that around and put it on the piano. It's the concept of the music happening. So I'm always personally fascinated by that. As a player and a writer, I go, okay, yes, I could make something fit for an instrument. But as a conceptual thinker, knowing that, well, you can make pretty much anything work for any instrument within reason.
Well, and the gray stops eventually, though. For example, like, you know, if I see a chord on my page and both chords are on my lowest string, or both notes are on my lowest string, well, there's something physically that I can't do.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah, there's definitely a balance between them. And also, you know, I suppose most things that we're used to doing now, at one point someone was complaining about that you don't do this on the violin, right? And now we're just used to it, and now you teach kids, oh, you got to start doing this because eventually in 20 years you're going to be playing these types of chords, or you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully all theory is descriptive and not prescriptive. It's of course the art will stretch itself, and part of what is great is that, oh, here's something that's familiar, but it also goes someplace where it isn't. You know, just because I haven't seen it before doesn't mean it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm. So the reason I wanted to play this after we heard Elizabeth talking is it was actually really fun meeting with. So the next piece we're going to be playing is called Square Down. It's by Dan McGuire, and this was also a submission after our speed writing prompt. And what I loved was after we got to talk with him and work with him for a little bit on the piece, there was kind of this new window on like what the image is of the four of us playing, and he really wanted it to be four kind of like uncooperative string quartet members. It was really about the individual voice and kind of like this battle of the egos.
Wow, that was a stretch for us.
But yeah, I think it's like those sorts of things where you know, often we're like, oh, wish I could get inside Beethoven's head or something like that. And when you can actually get into a composer's head, there's so much to unpack and so much to learn. Yeah, and I think this was a fun one to kind of learn about that.
So the prompt, again, this is for the speed writing, so the prompt is the same, the Bach and the same Led Zeppelin, and the prompt to us was, no. You are each contributing to this conversation, but not necessarily in a cohesive way.
Not trying to blend.
No.
Or just, yeah, just.
Some interruptions.
Yes, exactly.
All right, well, I'm excited. Let's play it.
Very fun.
That's great.
It's just-
So-
Yeah, and you know, maybe it's a more uplifting and jolly kind of feel
Very
to Brittany's piece, but actually like the starting material, and it's the same thing, and it's amazing. Again, like the different types of people that you pull in the same room, and just where a person will take it. It's wonderful.
Can I just point out, here's a great example of using the material that we prescribe, but then creating a new concept that goes around it. As we already talked about, right? Here are the two pieces that are being used, the Bach and the Zeppelin. And then here's the concept for us, so that we're having a conversation. Just to point out, so I think you guys can hear me if I talk with these mics on. I'll talk a little louder. So I start with the melody. So the opening notes are. So it comes from the fugue, it's already there. And then one of the big things from Kashmir, if you don't know it, is against a hemiola field. I love that, by the way. It's so progressive, and then you go back to like John Dowell, and he's already, anyway, sorry. So here's an example in bar 9. I'm gonna have Ryan and I play. Ryan is trying to get in his melody that is based off of this Bach figure. I'm playing the viola part is trying to get this Zeppelin rhythm, but it's not even in a hemiola, it's just kind of random. And here's how that sounds, right on 9. I think that is absolutely hilarious because for me it's also like a inward almost viola joke because not only am I interrupting, not only does it not fit, I'm not even doing the correct rhythm from the thing. It's just dead on. So I love when humor can be like that in music.
Yeah.
And also different tonality. And,
Yeah.
picking on each other.
Yes. Maybe let's swap places. One of the fun aspects of our concerts for Charlotte New Music is Jason and I will always switch parts for different pieces. And so we often play a lot of musical chairs. Today we've decided to just play musical chairs once. But so the next piece that we're going to showcase is, this was one of the pieces that we received before we got to the festival. It's called Dawn. Okay.
Dawn is the sponsor for the lighting today, by the way.
And one thing that I thought was really fun about this piece was how we got a totally different sense of character before working with Yifeng and afterwards. And it was one of those things where it was like, again, we probably could have given a very compelling performance based on absolutely no communication whatsoever with the composer, but there's just this hugely important added dimension when you are talking to a composer that you can't really take for granted.
Yeah.
So why don't we play the beginning of this? Lovely. So, it's so fun to just kind of revisit these things and think about. So, maybe someone else can reveal. Before we worked with Yifeng, what were you thinking in terms of character when you saw this piece and you saw the tonalities, the dynamics, all of that?
I have to remember.
I know, it's literally, I was thinking too, it's so long ago. I think I was thinking more about the quality of the sound. I see, okay, so many octaves, so many chords. Okay, let's go for like a pure sound. Maybe organ-like is a term we like to use sometimes. But, that's maybe the extent of how far I would
If my memory serves me correct, after we spoke with him, he wanted things more aggressive, and our approach was slightly, I hesitate to use the word softer, letting the tonalities give us a hint to, oh, here's a beautiful open chord, let's it be nice and ringing, talking about to sonority.
Yeah.
And after meeting with him, no, he wanted a lot of things more dug in, more grit in the sound, if I remember correct.
Yeah,
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and I think one, hopefully we kind of achieved that. But one cool thing about what we got to do in particular with Yifeng was that we also played his speed writing piece. And it was so fun to see some of these things that we had talked about transfer over within the span of like 3 days. You know, he got the prompt, and then we were working with him. I think it was a smaller ensemble, and already we had seen, putting in different adjectives, putting in different details that were in some sense like not necessarily catered to us, but it was, oh, okay, we've like worked with these people, and as a result we're sharing a different kind of information. And yeah, I think that's one of those things where on our end too, we can read a composer better if we've worked with them, if we've talked to them, even if it's a piece we haven't seen before.
And a lot of the initial things, I think, stems from something that Elizabeth was mentioning earlier, that I believe, if I'm correct, Yifeng, his instrument's guitar.
That's what I was going to mention.
And so, like, here's a really simplistic view from my perspective, is that with guitar, especially electric guitar, the more notes you have, in terms of a run of notes, if you have a series of 6 or 8 notes that are very fast, that's going to be more aggressive, that's going to be heavier, that's going to have those things. Also, if you have a group of chords in a row, a stack of chords, that's going to inherently be more aggressive. Whereas with strings, that's not necessarily the case. We can play a sextuplet very delicately, and what more is going to influence us is that tonality. And so that was a fantastic, I thought, example of, oh, the second I found out he was a guitarist, an electric guitarist too, it's like, oh, just imagine some distortion.
Right away I was thinking power chords.
Power chord, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a cool. Should we jump to the next piece? Yes. Okay. So, returning to the speed writing prompts once again, we also. Ooh, sorry. So one of these pieces, I think, in contrast to Brittany's piece as well as Dan's piece, we kind of got this incredible like set of different moods captured within one really short space, in a way that was really pretty unique.
Yeah.
It was definitely different from anything we had seen, and I think I just wanted to play this as yet another example of how you really just can get so much out of the same material from different people. I'm really kind of obsessed with that concept of like where people will take the same information, and it's given just like who they are and where they're coming from. And I think, yeah, this speed writing exercise is actually just so wonderful at like shining a spotlight on that. So this is by Joe Craven.
Yeah, I mean, this one to me stood out definitely as one that we just needed to play today, very purposefully. It's such a good one. And this one, along with Brittany and Dan's, all three do something I think that's so cool. In the form of a miniature, they tell a complete story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is
It's
fascinating.
impressive too.
That they can do that
Yeah.
in such short amount of time. Like you said, this one goes through so many places. I feel like it went around the world in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, what was that, a minute and a half?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. I think
Actually, we didn't mention. Maybe we mentioned it and I missed it, but the other guideline they are given is it's less than 2 minutes is the requirement, right?
Right.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which again, another quite limiting factor.
Right. Yeah. Maybe can we hear from Elizabeth before we
Yeah.
jump to this next
Yeah.
piece?
So, and it depends on the experience, but like typically if we're at a brewery, it should be low stress, interesting, and an adventure really. And that's how a lot of our concerts actually the audience seems to think about it, like an adventure, because you have traditional sounding stuff, you have very atonal, aleatoric stuff, you have groovy stuff, like you have fusions of other genres, and it's like so interesting. People come from all over the world to write music for people like yourself.
Yeah, so I think that ties together. I mean, it clearly, like, Elizabeth kind of had a similar, has a similar sense of just what Charlotte is able to do in terms of just bringing different voices to the table. And also, I think it's a cool thing to think about also programming in terms of, okay, we're used to certain types of programs where it's an all Beethoven program or something like that. But when you're thinking about, okay, well, it's all new music, one person's impression might be, oh boy, and another person's impression might be, oh, okay, we're going to get like a different taste of different styles. I mean, for me, even from the excerpts that we've just played, some of them sound more contemporary, and some of them sound, like they're in totally different sound worlds in a way that I think just saying new music concert doesn't really kind of give the sense of the diversity of voices that you will get from a set of people who wrote something 2 days ago.
In fact, it cheapens it.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
It's like going to a restaurant that's just called food.
It kind of is. Thank God they're serving food.
Yeah, and I do want to just point out that, while we've picked a couple of composers' works to feature today, we are going to be featuring a couple other composers from this past summer in a later episode. So, it's not all or nothing right now. So, I want to jump to, I think, one last excerpt, which is from, I don't want to get it wrong, Maxwell's Demon Dances on the Head of a Pin. It's by, we loved working with Morgan Jackson. And so we're going to play a little excerpt from the middle of the piece, actually. And I think one thing that really stood out in terms of qualities of this piece was how we were working with different textures, different what's primary, what's secondary in terms of the material. And I think that was one of the more challenging but also interesting things to dive into and dig into while we were working on this, and then also while we were talking to Morgan about what he was looking for, what we saw based on what was on the page. And, we made some changes, we made some adjustments based on what we were thinking. But yeah, there's just a lot of texturizing that's going on in this particular excerpt as well, which is, I think, why we selected it. So why don't we give it
Yes. knowing the piece well enough probably to maybe even play without music. It feels so different to start it in the middle, which shouldn't surprise us, I suppose. But I mean, it's really pretty, but it almost it feels you're missing such a big chunk of information that makes this, which you could say about any of the pieces that we were doing as well. But I love for example, the tonal shift towards the end there, where wait a second, this is not going where I expected. It's really neat.
Yeah, and I think you can probably tell just from that listen how there's this soaring melody in the first violin part, and then these like kind of waves and like undulating stuff. And I think normally when I would see something like that, I'm thinking like texture or weird kind of shaped accompaniments, and then like this should be the thing that we always hear at all times. And actually, that wasn't necessarily the case. Kind of the point was to hear like these huge waves that maybe obstruct the primary line or something like that, which, yeah, I think that's just one of these things where, the more you think about, different perspectives and what a composer is looking for, it's not always cut and dry what you would necessarily expect. And yeah, I think that's a learning experience for at least me as well. Yeah. So one of the things that we did this summer that was different as a result of COVID, the festival couldn't take place in person, so it was all virtual. And so one of the projects that we kind of undertook was, we did do a performance. We streamed it from, this wonderful studio. And so we played the composer's works on a live stream performance, but we also wanted to have a sort of, memento is not the right word, but some sort of concert-like experience that was kind of going above and beyond what we could do over like a live performance. So what we did this year was we made music videos of each of the composer's works. And so, we obviously did one for Morgan's piece, but we did one for all of the quartets that we worked on for this past summer.
Prior to the festival.
Right, exactly. Sorry, not the speed writing
ones.
And so this kind of presented like an interesting artistic challenge of, this was kind of a decision for us of like, okay, we're very, very good at, taking some work and working with composers and kind of giving our interpretive spin, and that's kind of what we do. We perform quartet music. But how do we kind of add this visual element that isn't what we're used to doing? I'm used to just performing and being seen performing. And so this was kind of like another art form that we just had to do. And it was interesting. I was thinking about, we were talking about in the Santa episode, this like transfer from art form to art form.
Yeah.
So Kyle took this set of photographs that he loved and was familiar with, and kind of the project was, how do I turn that into music? And then in turn for us, it's, okay, how do I take this stuff that's on the page and turn this into art? And it's like always this cycle across art forms. And yeah, I think it was kind of a question of like, what are we trying to do here? I don't know if you have any particular thoughts about this.
Well, I know some of the thoughts that Sean has shared with me, and I think with all of us, is that part of creating a highly produced, fantastical music video is sort of a stand-in for the electric energy that you get from a live performance. It's not a live performance. You can't see the sweat dripping on somebody's instrument. You can't see and you don't have the energy of the crowd. So what's going to replace that? Or, and maybe it's not an exact replacement. Who cares? It's still really fun. So.
Well, it's that. I mean, like here, anyone watching right now, we have 2 mics up there that are very expensive and running through a mixer here. We have room simulation for when we play, and then we have a 4K digital camera to get even with that, this doesn't come close to replacing a live concert. And that was the original idea for the videos. Now, conceptually, to me, it's an extension of our playing. When we play, our job is to take what's on the page and make that come to life in the most electric way without changing necessarily what's on the page. There's inference, there's implication, there's all these things, of course, so sometimes we're putting in our own spin, or sometimes something just doesn't work and we have to find a way to make it work, and depending on the composer, we try to stick within certain bounds or we let ourselves go further out of the bounds to make that thing work. For me, the videos were the same thing. What is the music doing, and how can we represent that visually so someone who doesn't get the live experience of seeing Aviva and I lean into each other here and think, oh, I should be listening there, they don't get that. What can happen on the screen to make them direct their ears in a specific place? And that, I suppose, is an extension of what we've done from day one with Beo in general. Even when we talk about quartet playing, whether it be third graders or college, we're always talking about these kind of things. So really, it's just an extension. The only difference is learning, how to use a camera and how to think like a cinematographer and all that. But that stuff's learnable, I think.
Hopefully.
Well, they learned it.
They did learn.
You know.
Shall we share a video excerpt
Sure.
from a piece called Matrices by John Kosh? Yeah, so that kind of gives you a sense of, some artistic choices that we made as a result of kind of living with this piece, and also kind of making some choices about video stuff to share. I will add that all of the quartets that we worked on, some that you heard today, not the speed writing ones, but in their entirety, as well as some others. You can find those all on our YouTube page, as well as Charlotte New Music, their webpage. And I also want to say that we actually have a super exciting thing coming up on Thursday. It's at 8 p.m. and we're doing a live watch party event. We'll be there. And it's a music video that we made of the winner of our 2018 composition competition, which, for those of you who have been tuning into our episodes, this is My Scary Robot Voice by Kareth Livengood. And so we had a blast working on this music video, and we're really excited for this release that's going to be Thursday at 8 p.m. You can join us live on Facebook.
Yes.
I thought today's program was a perfect title, because the more I was thinking about it throughout the week, I was thinking, what's bold about this? Well, first of all, I love, like you said, everything that we played today has such different characters and colors and things, but then I started thinking, the other thing that every piece that we played today has in common is that it was only the four of us and our acoustic instruments. So, here's this thing called the string quartet that Haydn basically started. Okay, we know there's some things before, but we'll say that Haydn basically started it. And for 200 some plus years, we have this thing that's just the string quartet. And here we are in 2020. Why the hell would someone keep writing for it? Well, because there's still things to still explore. Now, we only have 12 notes in an octave. And combined with our instruments, we maybe cover 4 or 5 octaves. That's not that many different notes, yet there's still these permutations of it. And I think that to me is bold, that these composers continue to step in and find a way to make this living thing that happens to be our life and our livelihood continue to be a reflection of society in a given moment. I think that is very cool. Because you could sit and say, okay, it's new music, they're writing for it. But I don't think that's the point. I think the point is the reflection of society, and what reflection to be had right now. Between the coronavirus, between the flooding of the Capitol, all of this crap that's happening, what a time. And where does that get filtered through so that someone can think about it in a more poetic way, in a way that maybe offers the soul something deeper to look at? I think it's music. And with this, again, it's just the four of us, the four instruments. We do, even the Santa, which I love, we have the music box, we have staging, we have different elements that get pulled into the art. But this is bold. It's just the four of us, just our instruments. And I think that is a commendable effort on any composers, and in 2020, actually it's 2021, isn't it? To be continuing to do that. And so it was, for me, it was really fun to get to dive back in to this music now, and that kind of reminder that there are people out there doing this now, and they should be doing it. I think that's very cool. Thanks for joining us today.